Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. It is Saturday, which means that it's time for the brand new content report. Here's all the fresh, uncut content for all the projects we've made progress on this week, available for the conceptbait.net platform members and supporters of my projects. This week, for the Artag Rise project, we have pretty much been preoccupied with the creation of the level transition. This level transition ties into the progress we've made in the last week's videos, where we have created an elevator which detects when the players enter it, opens the doors, and transfers us to the next level. In this case, the level transition is supposed to spawn right as the animation of the elevator doors opening is done playing. That's when the animation happens. In the middle of it, we switch between the scenes, and then the animation fades away. Now, the story of the entire game is split up in 5 separate acts: the old compound, the jungle, the ruins of the metropolis, the underground, and the compound A. And an interesting idea I had is to vary up the design of the logo depending on which act you are currently playing through. For example, compound B, or the old compound, is supposed to be this old, decrepit, forgotten part of the facility. So the three-dimensional level transition logo for these compound B levels would essentially be rusty, using a lot of browns and earthy colors, a lot of rust, some broken bits and pieces, and anything that really fits in the theme of an old and decrepit facility. While compound A is this intact, modern, preserved version of the facility, where all the main experiments take place. For this one, the logo would be nice and pristine, lots of chrome colors, maybe just a touch of fingerprints on the metal, but for the most part it should be looking like it's a very finely preserved piece of metal. For the jungle that separates the compound B and the metropolis would have a lot of vines, a lot of greenery, a lot of foliage all over the logo. So in a nutshell, the general aesthetic and design of the logo would reflect the act that you're currently playing. In this week's production content, you will see me create the logo from scratch, texture it in Substance Painter, and animate and code the entire transition, including the particles and the polygon-based background animation, all in Godot engine. Now, this may seem like a large chunk of work, but this realistically took me less than about 3 hours to create. And I really wish I could have done more in terms of the Artag Rise project, but my scheduling has been kind of wonky. So let's move on to the next project. It is finally done, or at least the pistol arrangement, that is. If you have been following the previous development vlogs, you will know that I have taken on the task of creating some sort of a dynamic pistol generation system. This is a system where the weapons are kind of procedurally generated. They're actually split into 3 different pieces: the barrel, the back piece, and the grip. These 3 separate pieces will have a certain amount of varying designs, and the game is going to generate different looking weapons by creating various combinations of different barrel designs, back designs, and grip designs. I figured this might help me create a lot of variety in the game, but this also proves to be quite a heavy undertaking as well. So far I've created 10 barrel designs, 6 back designs, and 1 grip design. And you know what? At this point, I'm gonna stop. I think at this point I have more than enough assets to test the system out. There's plenty more that I can do, but at this point I'm gonna switch to doing textures and then programming the random pistol generation mechanic. So in this week's content for the Dream Team Theater, you will see me create the last little bits of assets for the weapon generation, the clip, the handle, and finally we are going to start texturing. You will see me prepare the UV mapping for every single bit and piece piece for the weapon generator, shortly after which we will hop on into Substance Painter and start texturing every single one of these gun pieces. So far I have honed it down to handling about 2 textures per hour, so that's 2 gun pieces textured, and the very first texture theme that I went for is what I call the Yellow Tech Pistol theme. It is a theme that employs a lot of rivets, a lot of tech slots and inserts, some sort of compartments and components, a lot of normal map stamps that really give it some sort of a tech look. Now, there aren't a lot of other colors in this particular theme. It is primarily yellow with a couple of dark gray with a hint of blue colors, mainly for the sights, logos, and distinct ornaments on the weapons. This theme being primarily a yellow color with all the detail coming from the normal stamps, it's not exactly the best texture I would consider for the weapon, but that's the thing. This is not the only texture that this weapon will have. It is, after all, a procedural weapon generation system, which means that not only do I have 10 barrels and 6 back pieces and 1 grip at the moment, I also have 5 textures. So combining all of those variations together, we will get 300 different pistol designs throughout the game. And there's nothing stopping me from creating another yellow-based texture where instead of using, say, predominantly plain yellow color, I can use a combination of yellow and red and a little bit less dirt and grime around the weapon, as well as fewer normal map stamps. Right now, the normal map stamps give these weapons a very futuristic and very tacky-like look. With the next color theme, I'll probably go with the yellow plus red, and with the next one, chances are I'll go for a standard gun color, which is this grayish with a hint of blue in it. And something that I've been thinking about while I'm making these themes is that, do these themes and these colors and these textures just represent another variety of the gun, or do they have some sort of a visual information behind them? Do they have some sort of a cue or meaning behind their color theme? Say, for instance, with the Yellow Tech Pistol, this is primarily explosive firepower. Pistols with this particular theme will have a lot of stopping power in their projectiles, in their shots, which means that anytime you open up a crate or anytime an enemy drops a weapon, you can visually see that, hey, that is a bright yellow color weapon. It has a lot of rivets and a lot of slots and a lot of components. That is a tech pistol, which means I may want to explore it and I may want to take a look at its stats, and it may be worth it risking my ass to get that weapon because it could be proved useful and it could be better than what I'm currently sporting right now. Weapons with the green theme would be toxic, weapons with the blue theme will have electricity damage, weapons with the red theme would be fire damage, weapon with the yellow theme, maybe yellow and red, would be explosions. So you get the general idea. The theme of the weapon will carry some sort of information behind it instead of just being another color palette or another skin. On the other hand, haha, funny, this is something that I've been working on is the fix for my arm rig. There were a lot of things wrong with the arm rig. The knuckles were not aligned in the proper place, the thumb was kind of deforming my palm in a very weird way, and the elbow was not very well modeled, and of course the candy wrapper wrist. I've spent an episode coming up with a system to fix the candy wrapper wrist, and I did manage to get the bone of the hand to be split in half, and then set up the weights in such a way where when you rotate one of the halves, it doesn't rotate the entire wrist, making the whole thing collapse on itself, where instead it rotates the upper hand in proportion to the rotation of the wrist, thus preventing the wrist from collapsing in on itself when it's rotated by, say, maybe 90 or 160 degrees. Now, after all that work, the result was still not great, so I have decided to say that's enough. This is as much time as I'm willing to spend on a pair of hands, and if it didn't work, then it didn't work. The reality of it is that I simply cannot afford any more time working on what is a fundamentally flawed set of hands. I could technically make it work and I could still work with it, but to be honest, there are better solutions available out there for this project. I've looked around the paid models on CG Trader, I bought a few models to see how they operate. Most of the models came in the FBX format, and I was really looking for something that already already had an IK rig set up on it right away. And if you buy a model that only delivers in an FBX format, the IK handles are not paired, they're not bundled with the rig. As far as I know, if you're working with an IK handle system in Blender, it is a Blender specific system. You have to set up Blender specific constraints, which means that I had to find a set of hands specifically made in Blender and that was available in a Blender file, not a universal FBX file. And such a pair of hands I did find. Not only that, this set of hands is completely free and royalty free. It's kind of sad that among all the paid hand rigs that I purchased from here, it was the free one that actually got the job done the best. Highly recommend you take a look because I was thoroughly impressed with this set of hands. It pretty much fits the exact level of control that I would like to go for. It offers you the forward kinematic and inverse kinematic handling for its fingers and its wrists. The set of hands is sporting some sort of a jacket, which I think I will end up remodeling into more of a shirt just to fit the kind of like a retro 50s, 60s aesthetic, something maybe with checkerboards. The most important thing is that this free asset solves a huge chunk of work for me and is freely available to anyone, so anybody who is following the production of these videos and does something along the same line at home, you can freely download this model and implement it into your game and continue watching the series. The most important highlight of me experimenting with the set of hands is that finally I have made the system work with the multi-rig system. Now, technically I got some sort of a test working before, but this is the point where I'm using legitimate models that will end up in the game. As you can see here, the weapon is now made up of 3 parts: the grip, the back, and the barrel, and I have animated the set of hands, and the set of hands is only being animated with the grip, which means that I can now swap in and out various parts of the weapon to generate a procedurally generated pistol. And just to keep things clear, I started with the weapon that I used to call the shit gun. I started that weapon by having a pair of hands pre-baked right into the model, right into the animation of the hands. It was one single rig, which was a terrible way to go of setting up your FPS hands rig. You're supposed to have one set of hands and many different weapons, and you're supposed to animate them together, but have them as 2 separate armatures. So what's worth noting in this particular clip is that the pair of hands is its own separate object with its own armature and its own animation player, and the pistol, predominantly being the pistol grip, is its own armature and its own object, and it's completely separate from the hands. At this point, this will allow me to create all the animations, the shooting, the running, the sprinting, the reloading, for one single grip, and then I can swap out all the other bits to build the design of the final weapon. We are super close to getting this up and running, and I'm really excited to get a bunch of random weapons being generated and deployed in the chest or dropped by enemies. I'm feeling these mechanics will end up being a lot of fun. We'll find out once we get to testing this. So that is all that I have for the Dream Team Theater project for this week. Let's go ahead and move on to the next project. For the Accursed Kingdom, we have pretty much seen the least amount of progress done, but progress nonetheless. What we've done is create a few mockups of interesting locations in the game. Now, right now, what I'm trying to concentrate on is the creation of the fun-to-traverse world. A fun-to-traverse world while you're playing in co-op, nonetheless. The creative method, which I've employed while creating these mockups, came to me while I was working on the storyboard for a music video for one of my music projects. The software I used to create the storyboard for this music video is called Storyboarder. It has a lot of fascinating and very useful tools for quickly and rapidly creating storyboards for any project. However, one thing stood out. That program actually counts how many miles you have drawn, or at least I think it's miles, it's some sort of a unit of measurement. But nonetheless, whenever you draw with your digital pen or mouse, it actually tracks how much you have drawn, and it gives you notifications every, I think, 8 miles of drawn. it gives you a notification to switch to the next storyboard, which I found very fascinating and very useful because I have made a lot of progress in one single session when I was creating the storyboard. So I decided to try to employ something similar. Now, I'm using Krita to create the graphics for the games, for the concept art, for the mockups, so Krita doesn't really count how many quote-unquote miles you have drawn. However, what I could do is set up a timer. What I did is set up a 5-minute timer, and I had to quickly sketch in some sort of environment idea in that 5-minute time frame. This reminded me a lot of the studies we used to do in college called life drawing, where in a matter of maybe about 5-10 seconds, maybe a minute, you have to depict the pose of the model who's standing on the podium in front of the class. This practice forces you to shed any sort of notion of putting in detail or specificity into your picture. You're supposed to draw the general gesture, the abbreviated idea of what you are witnessing in front of you. And this allowed me to create a plethora of various locations for the game. Now, they don't have a lot of detail, they're very general, but at least they give me a starting point of where I can move up. Most often than not, while I'm drawing one piece, I get an idea for the next one, and pretty much once you get into it, the ideas just start flowing effortlessly. Not all of them are great ideas, but ideas nonetheless. This is all the content that I have for you for this week. Check out theconceptbay.net, consider becoming a supporter via the theconceptbay.net platform, and get access to all of the production videos available for all of the projects you've seen me work in these report videos. It is a single membership all-access pass to all of the content on the platform.